Bam!
Business is the fuel that drives America. Innovation, hard work, risk, and reward. It's what many call the American dream. And we're bringing the dream to you. It's the Business Beyond the Boardroom show with your host, Mark Steckman.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Rich Fields. This is Business Beyond the Boardroom, the fastest hour in business on the radio and, of course, podcast as well. We are broadcasting live from the Beasley Media Group radio station compound here in Boomtown, Tampa Bay, Florida. I'm your Chief Marketing and Business Inspiration Guru, Mark Steckman, and across that 100% smudge-free glass in front of me is the executive producer to the stars. That is Pat George. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir, and I'm kind of excited about today's show and format because I think it's going to be very entertaining with your guest.
Well, this is a very special episode of Business Beyond the Boardroom. Indeed, Pat, thank you so much for teeing that up. I'm excited as well. This is a special leadership edition, and in the past we've had a great backlog of guests on this show that are CEOs, entrepreneurs, tech startup founders, all of the above. And today's guest is one of those. His name is Jayson Waller. He's a self-made success that came from hustle, heart, and toughness. He's harnessed these instincts to build 3 companies from scratch into multi-million-dollar enterprises with his most recent venture, which is known as Powerhome Solar, skyrocketing towards $1 billion. And by the way, Pat, I was texting him last night, and I said something about $800 million, and he corrected me and said it's $1 billion business. Jayson is always looking forward, evolving himself and his businesses while sharing his path to success and entrepreneurial insights. I think that's what you're going to love about today's full-hour episode. He is the host of a podcast as well, Pat. It's called True Underdog. It's the number 3 entrepreneurial podcast on Apple Podcasts. Talk about a big footprint, and he's also writing a book that's coming out in October, and it's titled Own Your Power. Jayson Waller, CEO of Powerhome Solar. Jayson Waller, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super excited, Mark.
Yeah, I'm over here tripping on my own words. Hey, Jayson, you've got a great backstory, and for those of our listeners who've never heard of Powerhome Solar, by the way, I know we've got folks listening in Michigan and many of the other 15 states that Powerhome Solar operates in already. But for those folks that are listening, let's say in the state of Florida, who hadn't heard of Jayson, hadn't seen your commercials on TV or on the radio or online, Jayson, love for you to tell a little bit about your origin story. I know you grew up in a trailer park. You became a dad as a teenager. You mortgaged your home to launch the Powerhome Solar business back in 2014, and now you're on track to be $1 billion. I guess you're at $1 billion company. Tell us about that incredible journey.
No, thanks. I mean, look, I moved to North Carolina in high school when I was 14, and my dad worked for AT&T in a Corning plant, blue-collar, third-shift job. And then when he got to morning shift, he wanted to deliver papers at night to help pay bills. I would help him do that, then go to school. And I'm talking about delivering papers from like midnight to like 4 in the morning and then go to school. So it was crazy. But that's what we had to do. And my wife now, we were dating at the time in high school. Her family didn't really like me. They judged me because I lived in a trailer park. I couldn't control that. People would say things because I had fake Tommy Hilfigers on. And so I had this feeling of things I couldn't control I needed to do something about. I did get her pregnant when we were in high school. We had our daughter. We have 4 great kids now and 2 grandkids. But, I had this knack to inspire and motivate and enroll people into stuff I was passionate about. I saw that at an early age when I got a few sales jobs, and I was the number 1 salesperson. And then I got a job at Bell Atlantic Mobile / Verizon Wireless, and I was the number 1 business account manager. And all these things that led up, I said, I've got to open my own company. And I opened a home security business, and it did well. We did a lot of door knocking and van teams, and I did that for about 8 years. And then I partnered with another guy doing a security business and opened that up, and we did a lot of call centers. And that lasted about 18 months. We built it up to about $36 million in sales. But I felt like the security business was stagnant. I felt like I wasn't impacting the world. I felt like I wasn't making change. And so I really wanted to get in the solar industry. I thought it was cool. I thought it was slick. It reminded me of the cell phone business back in 2001 where it was new and people were like, how does that work? And so I did it. I took a chance and I did it. I didn't get paid for 22 months. I did mortgage my house. Everything I made from the home security business, I put back in. I remember at a crossroads, the end of 15 going into 16, upset, emotional, talking to my wife and calling friends like, what do I do? I've got 40 employees at the time, and I don't want to let them down. I've never really lost before. I'm not making money. I've lost everything. What do I do? And I just decided to push through. I prayed, and then I said, you know what? I'm going to go in and change everything. I fired most of the people. I started doing everything myself again and built the teams up. And, long story short, 5 years later, we're sitting with 2,000 employees. We're in 15 states. We're on pace to, do $1 billion in sales. And, we're super excited about our growth. We've installed solar on 5 NFL stadiums. We aren't in Florida yet, but we are coming this year to Florida, so we're excited about that. We've done a lot of things with military makeover and foundations, and, it's about giving back. And what's cool about solar is it's Own Your Power. It's also the title of my book, but people think solar you got to write a big check for, and that's not how it works. When we ask our customers, what's the longest bill in your house? They say it's their mortgage. It's not. It's their power bill. And that goes up every year. So our goal is to finance solar around the payment of their existing power bill and still have a power company if you need it. But really, instead of paying the power company, you're paying yourself on an asset that has an end date that gives you free power. And then I titled that into the book. So that's kind of how that went.
Hey, listen, I delivered newspapers as a young kid, and I know that there's a lot of life lessons that come from that. What was your first real sales job? Can you think back to what that was? Was that at the mobile store?
No, that would have been, and it wasn't a mobile store. I sold on the business account side.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I wish I'd have sold mobile store. I'd have made more money if I sold at the mobile store. But my first sales job was a telemarketing job. So at 17 years old, I was heartbroken. I drove back to Arizona by myself. And from North Carolina, it's a 3-day trip. I did it in 18 hours and 18 hours. And I wanted to go back to school, so I enrolled back into high school, lived with a friend and his family. It lasted 3 months. But because I had a lot of credits, I was getting off half the day. And I went to a job selling credit card protection over the phone, telemarketing, and then home security. So, I was doing that, making $700 a week part-time in high school at 17 years old.
Nice.
Then I drove back to North Carolina because I missed my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And then I got a job at AT&T doing sales, and then Verizon Wireless doing sales.
So what do you learn? What did you learn doing telemarketing? Because I know that's a tough. That's like door to door, but on the phone. I mean, you get a lot of rejection, a lot of negative responses from people on the other end. What are some of the key takeaways from that first job at 17?
Well, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, telemarketing was kind of in. Now I'm like, no, nobody wants to bother people while they're cooking dinner or giving their kids baths. So we don't cold call. I've also done door knocking. I love that program, but that also in today's world, you want to empower people to make educated decisions. You don't have to sell them. It's kind of how our model is at Powerhome. After all of the failures and the success I've learned from telemarketing and door knocking, but it was tough. Rejection, the more no's you get, I kind of mastered it where it was like, look, if it takes me 18 no's to get a yes, then if I get 16 in a row, I know I'm getting my yes soon. So I would get excited. And, the secret to that is you got to have the same energy on your first call, just like you do any appointment or door knock, as you do your last one. You can't get rid of that energy. You can't get rid of that passion. Otherwise, you got one shot. And you've got to show that, you're in control, and you got to listen. When you're selling somebody, you got to listen. But those are some of the things that I had to learn through, a lot of no's until how do I get them to say yes? I need to ask better questions. I need to listen. I need to, come back with them and have the same energy on call number 20 as I did call number 1.
That's a great point. And when I was young, starting in my career, we called that the showtime. You had to have a showtime presentation in the sales presentation. What do you tell somebody who's young right now in sales? Because I know there's somebody in sales listening to this show right now as they're driving on the way to their next call. How do you have that same amount of energy on your 16th presentation as you had on your first presentation?
Well, it's mindset. And, everybody's got to be coached. I'm still getting coached all the time. I've got mentors, and there's things I don't know. I learn from people that work for me, people that work with me. all of those things that you've got to be able to do. And I would say that, you got to train just like a basketball player trains every day. Michael Jordan practiced every day, even though he was the greatest. Those are the things that you've got to do. And if you're hungry and you're passionate about what you do, you got to set your mindset to say, look, this might be the one. You can't judge a book by its cover. You don't know who's going to say no. You don't know who's going to say yes. And you've just got to have that same energy. It's all in your head. Because you're physically not having to do anything. You're just mentally having to make sure you're engaged with them the same way you are call number one.
Do you have to love what you're selling?
Yes, I believe that. If you're at a job that you don't believe in, that you wouldn't buy, or that you don't have, you're doing the wrong thing. You can't fake passion. So, like, I love solar. I love what it's about. I love that it saves the planet. I love that it empowers people to, to have energy independence. I love it, so it's easy to sell. If I sold something like Kirby vacuum cleaners, nothing against that. I did that at an early age, too, for about 3 weeks and said, this isn't for me. I don't love it. It feels wrong. So you have got to love what you're about in order to show that to the consumer.
I love that. And, because old school, the sales coaches would say, hey, I could sell anything. I could sell ice to an Eskimo. But if you don't love what you're selling, it comes through at some point, and it's a lot harder to have that same passion and energy as you're in your 16th and 17th and 18th presentation as you did on your first. Get a load of this. I'm looking at their awards and recognition. You can read this yourself at powerhome.com, and you can just go /awards if you want to see. But in 2020, this company was ranked number 255 on the Inc. 5,000 list of the fastest growing private companies in America, making it the third time in 4 years that they were in the top 300 on this super important list. They were ranked number 7 nationally among residential solar installers by Solar Power World in 2020, making them the number 1 residential solar power company in the Southeast and Midwest. And they're not content to stop. They're growing, coming to Florida sometime soon. And they've got partnerships, by the way. I think Jason sort of mentioned this a little bit in passing, with pro teams like the Detroit Lions, the Indianapolis Colts, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and other teams as well. But the most important thing, and I know you take pride in this, Jason, A+ ratings with the Better Business Bureau in all of your markets. That's a super important thing. And I know you're not one of the ones doing those spammy phone calls, telemarketing calls either, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, that kind of stuff maybe worked back in the day, but today with people having iPhones and access to social media, they want instant information and they don't want to be taken advantage of. So, they don't want to feel sold. They want to be empowered to make a decision. And so we don't telemarket people like that. We do everything. Most 95% of our lead gen, or what we would call advertising and branding, is done on digital marketing, social media, Google, things like that. And then we do about 5% of it on TV and radio to kind of help build the brand and awareness.
Yeah, in fact, I was talking with my buddy last night who lives in Detroit, and he said, hey, I know that guy. I see him on TV all the time. And I said, well, he's just as cool on person as he is on the TV. So there you go. Yeah, well, shout out to my buddy Dave, who recognized you right away as soon as I mentioned it. Listen, solar is such a hot industry right now, and so my natural question is, in getting into business in 2014 with Powerhome Solar, did you have any solar experience or interest in renewable energy in that sector before starting Powerhome Solar?
Yeah, no, we created the name in 14 and officially and created it, but didn't do anything till January of 2015 when I got out of the home security business. And I was passionate about it because it seemed like it was exploding in the West Coast and up in the Northeast. And so I was like, look, this is like cell phones. This is a new cutting edge way for people to get power. It's clean, it's renewable, it does the right thing. I lived in North Carolina at the time where there was a lot of coal ash issues from the utility companies here, where there's groundwater problems and from the coal ash and arsenic, people were getting sick. And so it was like, look, we've really got to find a way how we do energy. And Tesla was starting to come out with their electric cars, and it was like, look, electric cars are the future. I want to be in this because people are going to need power. We don't make enough power as it is. So kind of jumped in it. And it was a hard thing to figure out because I felt like, hey, if I love something, I can sell it. I've sold home security. I've sold cell phones. Like, this isn't a big deal. Oh, it was a big deal. The first 2 years was so hard, and it was a construction business. And so all the money we would make, an example, if we did $1 million in sales, it would cost us $800,000 of that $1 million for the first 60 days till we saw $1 back because you don't get paid till installation. So this was a cash flow problem fast that I wasn't used to. I was used to the home security business where if I signed somebody up for an alarm system, I sold the contract. It was no big deal. The company gets funded immediately. But when you're in the construction business, and I didn't understand that part, that's a cash flow nightmare. And so that was tough the first 2 years until we could explode and get through that. And, I loved the way that solar was starting to take the standpoint, like I said, in the West Coast and in the Northeast. But when we opened up our second state, which was Michigan in 2017, I would never have planned on opening Michigan, but somebody, a family relative was like, hey, I'd like to get solar up here. I'm like, dude, it's too gray in Michigan. There's no way. Right? Well, then I saw that their cost of power in Michigan was 60% more than the cost of power in North Carolina. And the solar production, the PV production, was only 15% less. So 60 minus 15 is 45. So people in Michigan are 45% better return on going solar than North Carolina, and that was our first state that was exploding. So I said, this is a no-brainer. Like, it's not about how much sun you get. It's the science of how much power costs. That's why New York does well. That's why, Vermont does well. That's why Massachusetts does well. That's why California has sun, but it does well. When cost of power is so high, you only need a certain amount of sun.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Well, how do you get past that cash flow issue? Like, going back to that, because, I know there's a lot of business owners that are listening to this show that are in the construction trades and are dealing with that head on right now. Do you go out and get external funding? I know you mortgage the house, but is there other ways and other things that you can give as tips or tricks to getting through that till you get to that second year?
Yeah, I've got a couple rules. I talk about it in my podcast all the time. Like, rule number one is if you're opening a business, you can't do it to get paid, because most great entrepreneurs, they're going to make the least amount of money for a hot minute, right? A year, 2 years, whatever. They're the least paid employee, and that's what it's supposed to be, because my rule is, number one, you pay your people first. Number two, you pay your vendors. Number three, you reinvest into the company. You got to build a foundation. The company's only as strong as your last week. Well, you need to make it as strong as your last month or your last 6 months. You got to build a foundation and invest in the business. Then if there's anything extra, maybe you get a little something. But you got to be eating like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, ramen noodles. You're going to have to slum it through to really build a business. And then when I did all that and mortgaged the house, when we got to a point where we had to bring in a private equity partner, a minority private equity partner, and we wanted to expand more states, we did that. We brought in Trivest for 25% of the business. And, that's been a great partnership to allow us to expand. But we got through it by reinvesting and not getting paid, that leadership team not getting paid for almost 2 years. And then, I make the same amount of money now as I did a couple of years ago because I reinvest into the company. That's what it's about. That's why we have, almost 1,000 company vehicles and 2,000 employees and benefits and 401k, because you got to reinvest into your brand. You can't pull all the money out and go live this life, because then you got nothing. The company has no foundation.
That's right. Well, then looking at a calendar, all right, so you're at it for a couple of years and things are now starting to take hold, and then another year later, all of a sudden, COVID strikes. So, a lot of businesses suffered or closed during the pandemic, more or less last year, but obviously things are continuing on this year. But your company, Powerhome Solar, grew a lot. Can you share some of your success strategies that helped get you through and grow that during that period?
Yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to GM here, because we had, when COVID hit last March, and we had calls after calls, the leadership team, the executives, we were on the call, 7 hours a day with different jurisdictions, different, lawyers, labor laws, you name it. We were on the phone trying to figure out, can we stay open? Should we stay open? What do we do? How do we follow CDC guidelines? What are we supposed to do? Everyone was freaking out. And the night before we really made a decision, GM came out and said they were going to make less money. The executives cut their pay down, and they were going to stay open because they were making less money. So we had a heated conversation with the executives. And, a couple of the executives were like, look, this was late March last year. Let's furlough everybody. We don't know what's going to happen. And we were sitting with 800 employees, so it's not like they had any packages for us or unemployment. None of that came out yet, and they didn't have anything for us anyways. But for our employees, nothing was out there. No unemployment, no nothing. And so, we had two of the executives saying, look, let's furlough everybody and pause everything, pause our vendors, and just take a timeout for 90 days and then reopen. And a couple others were like, no, I don't know if that's a good idea. And I said, look, and I got a little heated, and I said, look, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go off payroll indefinitely, and we're going to call our vendors and tell them we're going to, start paying them at the end of the summer. And if they don't like that, tough. And we're going to stay open because Lucy, who's a customer service agent, she has a mortgage to pay. And Mike, who's an installer, he's got to buy formula and diapers for his family. So we're going to stay open as long as customers are buying. We're going to stay open, and we're not going to go up. We're going to go off of payroll. And we're going to let our team know we're going off of payroll so they know that our intentions to stay open are not because we're greedy, but because we want to give them an opportunity to make money and to provide for their families and give the consumer a way to still get solar and battery storage, because power outages were going on. And with the pandemic, people were freaking out. People were working from home. They wanted to find a way to get their power bill down.
Yep.
So we did that, and all of a sudden things exploded. We doubled in size. It was wild. We were hiring people like crazy that were getting laid off at other places. And we followed all the CDC guidelines, and we social distanced, and we were doing fever checks, and we told people, look, if you're scared, stay home, and, you'll be inactive right now. Use your PTO time, use your vacation time, but, after that, you'll just be inactive. Come back when you're ready. But most people, over 90%, came into work.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
We grew.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, now, we're looking at, as we're moving into this next phase, where a lot of companies are really struggling with hiring employees. And I understand that, as you mentioned, your company grew from about 650 employees to over 2,000 now in the past year and a half. How have you been able to hire and continue to grow? And I mean, what kind of characteristics, if somebody's listening right now, obviously a heartbeat, blood pressure, breathing, these are important characteristics. If for some companies, they just want to have a warm body. But if you want to be the best of the best in your industry, what are some of the characteristics you look for? In also, how are you getting these people to join your team?
No, great question. I learned a long time ago that I don't like to hire people off of resumes or experience. I just don't believe in it. I mean, I didn't have a lot of experience, and my resume didn't give me an education. I had to Mickey Mouse some applications early to get jobs I wanted when I didn't have the education. And so, so I don't believe in what a resume says. I mean, our belief in our companies, you can throw that in the garbage. Unless you're in our accounting side or HR side, we don't care. We can teach skill sets. They've got to be passionate. They've got to have good morals. They've got to fit our culture. They've got to want to be part of something bigger than life. They've got to find a career and a home here and believe in what we're doing. We have a motto at Powerhome called BAM, building a movement, one panel, one customer, one employee at a time. They've got to buy into that for us to hire them. I don't care what their experience is, neither does our leadership team. They will train that. We need people that, want to be a part of something. They're not just looking for a job. Now, we also have an 80-20 rule. And I believe that 20% of people in businesses do 80% of the work. Your top 20% on your staff does 80% of the work. The next 60% does 20%. And that bottom 20%, they're holding everybody back. They're complaining. They're pointing fingers. They're making excuses. Their failures are because of other people's successes, and they're cancerous. So we have an 80-20 rule in our company where 20%, the bottom 20% on the KPIs are on a PIP plan and fired. Period. And so not only are we hiring new people, we're turning over the bottom 20% every month. And people are like, whoa, that's crazy. No, if I want to be the United States Postal Service and I don't want to grow, well, good. Worry about tenure. But when I want to grow the way we're growing, you need to worry about tenure for the people that want to be there in advance, and the people that are holding you down, you need to fire fast and just continue to replace. And so that's worked for me the last 4 or 5 years. We've been able to double in growth every year. And that's what I believe. And so when we're looking for people, that's what we look to find. And we find them on Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Craigslist. I mean, you name it. We have ads everywhere. We're using social media to place ads, Facebook, Instagram. We do a huge referral thing. Employees that bring employees are the best ones. We give them a $1,500 bonus after 90 days of the employee that joins. I mean, anything we can do to bring good people on, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and those best ones usually do come from referrals. I was listening to your podcast the other day, the True Underdog. Love it, by the way. Huge fan of the podcast. And by the way, a shout out to Joy McAdams for turning me on and introducing me to you and also to the podcast. But you were talking about that. In matter of fact, that employee that whole process of, if it even comes up into your mind, right? You were saying something, you were interviewing someone else, and you were talking about how if it even comes up into your mind, should I keep this employee or not? You probably already know the answer.
Yeah, so I used to make a lot of mistakes early on in my career, right? Where, I felt like, oh, let me give this person another chance. Oh, let me give this person another chance. And what I learned is I've never regretted firing somebody, but I have regretted keeping them and letting them poison and spoil other people. I think of bad employees as rotten milk in the refrigerator, and it's going to just stink up everything.
Yep.
So I'm a big believer. If you are sitting there contemplating if they should be there, you already know the answer. Don't sit there and go, what do I do? What do I do? You're wasting more time. If you're to the point, you've already written them up, you've already coached them, you've done everything you can do, and you're like, I don't know if they should be here. That's your answer. Because if you're to that point, you're done. Because you'll never get back. That's my belief. And so when I start questioning, because usually I take steps. All right, what do they need? Do they need more coaching? What can we do? How can I help them? How can I make them better? That doesn't work. All right, let me write them up. Maybe they need some structure and some discipline motivation, because they're not getting it with the encouragement motivation. So what does this do? Nope, that doesn't work. All right, do I need to get rid of them? Yep. If I ask myself that question, they're out.
How important is corporate culture in building a business? I mean, I go to your website, powerhome.com, and I see your face. You're got a great picture of you in the corner. It says Jayson Waller, founder and CEO. Obviously, you're the face of the culture. But how important is defining and creating and leading that culture, not only as the CEO, but for somebody else who's thinking about building a business too?
Well, I never was on anything until 2019, right? Everything was about the logo and Powerhome. And we hired a company, an ad agency, and we had a pretty big actor that we were signing to do our commercials. And Alan Sussman from the Sussman Agency, he's a genius, comes out and says, explain to me how solar works. And I tell him. This is the first time I met him. And we were going to go into TV for the first time, and he goes, "No, we're not going to hire." We were looking at Morgan Freeman. We're not going to hire Morgan Freeman. You're going to do these commercials, and we're going to take that money instead of paying an actor. We're going to double down and get more commercials. I was like, "Nah, I really don't want to be on there. It looks small, mom and pops." They're like, "No, you need to have a face with the brand." I'm like, "No, I disagree." This was a conflict I had, and I said no, and they're like, "No, trust me." They're like, "Jolly Green Giant has somebody. Steve Jobs is the face of Apple. All these things. You need to be the face of solar. You need to do this." And so I talked to the executive team. They pitched us on this thing. We did a commercial with the Detroit Youth Choir at the Fox Theater, and we tried it. We crushed it. It was fantastic. It was this major commercial, this great production, and we bought the song "Let the Sun Shine In," and it just took off. And then so now my face is everywhere. So I struggle with it a little bit, meaning it's kind of weird feeling to see my face everywhere, but it gives a face with the brand for people to trust. Right? Like my pillow guy.
Yeah.
And so they sold me on that. And so at the beginning of this, I was really bothered and felt awkward, where people are like, "Man, your face is everywhere." And I felt like, I don't know, I got to get over this. Now I'm over it. And I tell people, young entrepreneurs, old entrepreneurs, people that are trying to build a brand, don't be nervous. Over-brand yourself. Over-market yourself. If you start annoying friends and family, you're doing your job, because then other people are starting to notice you and follow you.
Yes.
And, the more haters that follow you, the more great people follow you. That's how it works. So, I believe my followers are people who don't like me, and that's okay.
Yep. Because
they're gaining more people to follow, to grow the business, to grow the brand. And that's what it's about. And so I've learned that. So sometimes it's a little awkward. It was uncomfortable at first with my face and all these ads everywhere, and my friends and family were like, "Dude, what are you pushing yourself all the time?" It's like, not really. It was an uncomfortable feeling. But you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because you're building something bigger than that. And so now I know my face there gives it better trust than just a logo, and allows our team to do better. We grow more. There's a culture. So that's kind of what we've built.
Well, now, as the kid from the trailer park that is now running a $1 billion business and one of the fastest growing businesses in its sector around the nation, a lot of people are depending on you, Jayson. How do you keep from letting that pressure get to you, and how do you stay motivated? I know you mentioned on one of your podcasts that you have people that you still use as mentors. How do you do it all as a leader? And you're still a pretty young guy as well.
Yeah, well, 41, so I'm not that young, but I'm sort of young. A grandpa, 41. So it's interesting, but
you're young.
I don't chase money, right? I chase winning. I have an addiction to winning. So, Mark, if me and you are in a game and it means I've got to break your arm off to win, then you're going one arm broken because that's how we're going to win, right? So
all right.
That's just my mentality. And so I treat business like I do if I was running a sports team or like if I was in a war. That might sound sick. That's just how I am. So I want the best people on the front line or the best people on the court, period, and I want the best bench. And we all are chasing to win, and we treat every day like a playoff game. So if we break a record this month, great. We get a quick clap, and now we got to break the record again. It's not enough. And some people are like, man, nothing's ever enough. Well, once you quit chasing, you quit dreaming, you quit working, to me, you start dying. It's a problem. So you've got to continue to find something to chase. Otherwise, you get bored. That's how I'm built. And then that's infectious. So people around me start to turn the same way, and they just want to win. And what are we winning? Well, we want to be the best and the largest, energy provider. We want to empower everybody to own their power. It might not just be us, it could be other companies, but we want to continue to grow. When we got to 1,000 employees, like, how do we get to 1,500? We got 1,500. How do we get to 2,000? We did 100 million in sales. How do we get to 300? How do we get to 500? All of these things, you just want to keep growing and not look back. And I have coaches. I have mentors. David Meltzer, who is the original Jerry Maguire, the movie's about him.
Yep.
He is one of my mentors. I love him to death.
I follow
him on my podcast. And he is one of the best human beings on the planet. He's taught me a lot more about gratitude and, how to really have an appreciation of ththings, not just be so hardcore all the time. And so you need to be coached. You need people to bring you back to reality and see things you're not seeing.
Yeah.
And and that's important. And you got to have enough humility and be humble enough to reach out, for guidance. And he's been beneficial. And, Heather Monahan was a mentor for me writing my book. There's just different people that you bring into your life that, you're able to do that. And I help people out, too, when I can. They ask me, I'm like, let me help you. There's young entrepreneurs reach out, or people that are in the middle of grinding their business. What do they do? It's about empowering and helping other people. And as long as you continue to do the right thing, good things will happen.
I know you've got to go in just a couple of minutes for an appointment, but I know something that's super important to you, and that is your family. And I've heard you talk about it in your podcast, the importance of your wife as a partner in marriage. And all these years, she's stuck by your side and coached you as well, it sounds like, and given you guidance, and you work together as a team. Talk about the importance of your family.
Yeah, family is everything. A lot of people say, well, you got to have a family life and a business life, and I just shared that on a podcast recently. It's just life, right? You got to. My wife understands that I'm going to grind. I'm going to work 12, 14-hour days. And it's moments that matter. It's not how much time I spend with them, because anybody can be home at 5 o'clock and see their kids, but they don't make impactful moments, and so their kids are in their room playing on their phones. I make moments matter. I require our family to do a certain amount of family dinners a week. We hang out on Sundays. We do football games together. We go on trips. I make the moments matter, and I believe that that's a big deal, so they get some of me. And then I share and I encourage feedback from them. Now, my kids are like, Dad, I see you on TV all the time. I don't care. I don't watch your podcast. Leave me alone. But my wife gives me honest feedback, right? And so I need that. But I tell her what's going on in the business. You got to have a partner at home as much as you have to have partners at work, because she's my life partner. I got to go to her and tell her what I'm struggling with at work, things that are going on. I can be vulnerable with her, and she can, hey, you're being rude right now, or hey, you're being great. Maybe you should do this. Like, I need that feedback because, for me, being the boss at work, nobody's going to tell me what I need to hear. They're going to tell me what I want to hear most of the time. So having a coach and having my wife kind of tell me what I need to hear really balances that out and keeps you between the buoys to do the right thing. And so it's important, and you got to make the work that you put in worth it by the moments that you get, the minutes and the moments that you get. You need to make them impactful with your family. Make them matter. If you make a memory, they'll remember that forever than you just being home for 5 hours a day.
Yeah. And speaking of things that you remember, I know we've got about 3 minutes, and hopefully you can tell this story quickly. I want you to share the story of the difference between the cow and the buffalo. This is something I heard in one of your podcasts, and it really has been game-changing for me since I've heard it. It's really causing me to look at things through a completely different light. Tell us a little bit about the difference between a cow and a buffalo.
Yeah, absolutely. So I heard this from John LeBlanc, who used to be my trainer at the gym, and he's a co-host of about a third of my episodes. And we were talking one time, and he's like, have you heard that story? We were on a podcast. I was like, no, and he told me it's amazing. So I started researching it, and I'm like, this is a life-changing, like, people need to hear this more. And what it is when there's a storm coming, the difference between a cow and a buffalo, a storm comes, a cow runs away from the storm. They sense it coming. They see the clouds getting dark. They run away from it. The problem with that is the storm chases them, and they're actually in the storm longer than they have to be. Where a buffalo senses a storm coming, and a buffalo runs towards the storm, so it gets through the storm quicker. And if you take that perspective into life, and we have a problem or we have an issue and we run from it, or we hide from it, or we just keep trying to avoid it, it's going to haunt us. It's going to control us. It's going to do all those things you don't want it to do. But if you run through the problem, through the issue, deal with it head on, you're able to live a better, happier life faster because you dealt with that problem and now it's behind you. It's not in front of you. And so that, I kind of take that mindset of like, I got to have this tough conversation with this person. Okay, well, I got to do it. I'm not going to hide from it, right? My business partner, Kevin Klink, I love him, hates confrontation. He will sweep everything under the rug and runs like a cow. And I'm like, dude, you can't do that. So then it explodes on him later where 10 issues come up with things. So, he's my dear friend, one of my best friends. He's my business partner, but I coach him on, dude, you're going to have to run through things and get uncomfortable get comfortable being uncomfortable, and you're going to have to, if there's an issue, you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have accountability now, where I am quick to deal with something where maybe sometimes I should pause. But that's the balance. But, if you use that cow-buffalo mindset when you're dealing with a problem, you got to try to be that buffalo and run right through it. And then then the sun shines there and things are easier.
Yep, and it goes away a whole lot faster. Jayson Waller, I know you've got to go, and I could talk to you for another full hour, but you are the CEO of Powerhome Solar, currently in 15 states, coming to the great state of Florida very soon. We're going to be looking for you, and when you do, maybe we'll have you back on the show. I hope you'll come back on the show, and we can
absolutely. This was fun.
Talk more about it. And for those who want to follow you, I know they can find you all over just by typing in Jayson Waller, but I want them to listen to your podcast, so hop over to it is called True Underdog, available on all the podcast platforms. But also, I want them to be looking for that book that's coming out in October, and it is titled Own Your Power. Did I get that right?
You did. Own your power, no BS, no excuses. The time is now.
Awesome. Jayson Waller, thanks so much for being a part of the show. We'll have you back again soon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
And that concludes another episode here on True Underdog. If you're interested in hearing more, make sure you subscribe at iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the YouTube channel. You can always visit TrueUnderdog.com, subscribe to all of them. Make sure you check out our newest episodes coming out on Mondays and Thursdays. True Underdog, baby. Bam!